What would you say? Let's just start at the very beginning. What led you into senior living care?
For the most part, I had a lot of family support, and that just enabled me to keep going and come in every day and feel like I had a purpose.
You've always been competitive is what I'm hearing.
I look back now, and those 4 years were really, really going to interpret who I was going to be going forward.
For those of you that don't know Mom, she does not sit still very long at all. If she starts to fidget a little bit, she'll do a little shimmy shake, and you'll see her, start shifting in her chair. You've lost her attention.
Now, I say this every show, and I'm not going to not miss this opportunity today. We are not perfect.
Sure, that's exactly right.
To go get some ice
cream, yes. And it's so exciting to be a part of.
Amazing.
It really is. It's one of the biggest things I think we've learned.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. We are so thrilled you're here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for going on the journey with us, but you know the drill. We got a great show in store for you today, so let's jump in on it. Grab your favorite cup of coffee and pull up a seat and join us right here on Around the Table with Vickie. I'm your co-host, Chris Runk, and across the table from me, as always, she's your host, ladies and gentlemen, Vickie Runk.
And as always, I am super thrilled to be here talking with everyone again today. We appreciate everybody so very much.
Mom, I'm excited about today's story because you were on another show here recently, and they honed in on the point that we really never talked about. It's a big part of your journey, and I think you even were excited to talk about it. So we're gonna jump in a little bit more and dive into that deeper, and that is the topic of activities director to founder. So your very beginning story to where we are now. And I think it's going to be a beautiful journey here. And I know you got a lot of great things you want to share. So what would you say? Let's just start at the very beginning. What led you into senior living care?
Well, back in 1985 to 88 is when I was at Liberty University studying psychology. And back then, psychology, social work, all the different things that have to do with mental health was just coming on to Liberty's tract of learning. So it was fairly new. And so the options of how you get into this line of work was very limited back then. So your dad took a clinical track. That was a little bit too high up for me educationally. And I took the social work track, which is a little bit more fun. Whenever we were learning about things, it was more hands-on. He was up there in the clinical track of, what medicines do this and what makes the brain do this. And ultimately, I've learned that through the years inadvertently. But back then, I really wanted to stick to how do I help people, just really down to earth kind of things. That's where I tend to really fit into that mold. So as my journey became very obvious that this is really where I wanted to be. And initially, I started with elementary education. Within just a few classes, I knew that sitting in the classroom, you know me well now, that would have never really ever worked for me.
For those of you that don't know Mom, she does not sit still very long at all. If she starts to fidget a little bit, she'll do a little shimmy shake, and you'll see her, start shifting in her chair. You've lost her attention. So I can't see that working.
Classroom education was not going to be my thing. And then when I met your dad, we became friends first before we ever fell in love. And he kind of guided me into this path after he really got to know my likes and dislikes and really where I felt like God was calling me. And it was perfect. It was perfect. I enjoyed every class. I learned so much. And there was a nursing home here in town called Camelot Hall Nursing Home. It is now called Lynchburg Health and Rehab. It has not changed its location. It's still there. I took you and your brother and your sister for a tour a few years back, and we saw where my office used to be, and I reminisced about the hallways and where I really cut my teeth on senior living. And I kept calling the administrator over and over again. Her name was Elizabeth Kale. She ran Westminster Canterbury for a very long time. That's where she retired from. And I worried really her to death because I wanted a job. But I wanted Director of Social Services. That was really where my tract was. That's where I wanted to focus on. And she didn't have anything in that position. There was a lady that had been there for a while, and it didn't look like she was going anywhere. But I kept knocking on the door. Hey, hey, I really would love to work here. And she called me one day and she said, I don't have the job that you're looking for, but you are so persistent. And to you young people that are just graduating from universities, let this be a lesson that persistence really does pay off. It's no different than trying to run for public office, knocking on the doors. Everybody hears about candidates saying that they're knocking on the door, that they're trying to gain trust. They're trying to gain your vote. That's what I was doing with Elizabeth Kell, constantly putting my face in front of her. And it was a phone call every now and again, too. And she said, I would love for you to come and try to be a part of our team, but I just don't have the position that you're looking for. However, I do have this part-time position as activities assistant. And I said, okay, let me try it. And that's kind of where God has a sense of humor, because I was just about a year away from graduating. And back then, the state needed my degree, my full degree, a copy of graduation requirements in order for me to do anything in social work. So looking back now, I know that God was really preparing me for ultimately owning my own company and understanding the importance of the activities director. How would I really ever gain that tremendous, experience, and not just watching over that department, literally going to their rooms and rolling them into the day room and getting them set up for all the activities. And it wasn't just daytime hours. We ran activities till 8 p.m. at night. So I would get out of university and go over and do the different activities. I literally were, I was hands and feet at that moment.
And I think that's so cool because that shows you how God prepared you. Mm-hmm. Just to be clear, too, for anyone who's just now listening, this is before Runk and Pratt was ever even thought of, yeah. Which is really cool. But I think it shows you how God prepared you at a very young age. I think the age of 21, is that
That's
correct?
Right. Yeah.
And it's funny now because knowing you so well, activities is one of the main spots that you hone in on. Mm-hmm. And I can see why. And it also shows people, sometimes there's this misconception that you're living up here, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're only at the highest level, and you have no idea what that even means. And staff have no idea what it means to do. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is you started at almost, an assistant level,
yes, to
an activities director.
Yes.
And you're going in and out of their rooms and wheeling them out and saying, hey, Mrs. Smith, I really would like for you to come play, beach volleyball today. And
anybody that knows anything about the seniors, they don't always willingly come out. So I have to get to my job a good hour and a half before that activities actually starts. And the way that Mrs. Kale is looking at me as a new employee, can she motivate those residents to come out? How full can she get this day room? And that's kind of how we look at our activities directors too. Is she bonding with the residents? That meant whether I was going to get that next level of director of social services job, which would really prepare me for what God was going to lead me into 4.5 years later. And so I worked really hard at that little activities assistance job. And I didn't always have the best attitude. I'd been to classes. I was tired. I was coming in off of studying for a test all night long. And so I had to pray before I walked into that building, Lord, use me in some way to bring light into these residents' life. And it ultimately became a passion of mine to see how they reacted when they saw me. And they knew that I was a person that's going to bring fun into their life, or at least get their day going a little bit, or end their evening with, a song. And I was responsible for planning some of those activities as well. So using some creativity there, learning how to decorate the room for the activity.
Well, before you go too far on that thought, that does lead into my next question is, what did working in activities teach you that you still use today?
Oh, yeah, lots of it. How the room looked when they entered in. If we were doing a themed party, I would get there early enough. We had in our budget to decorate, and we wanted to immerse those residents into an experience, which is what activities is all about. And I quickly learned that that was the key and the route to their happiness, really. It was food and activities. And those two became the most important parts of their day, not only for them, but for a family member to to drive in and have a visit after work and see that Mom was eating her meal, and then she had activity to go to right after that because we ended most days with activities. And like I said, even up until 8 p.m. at night. And these are nursing home patients, so they're not assisted living. I'm wheeling a lot of wheelchairs to the day room. I sometimes have them lined up, and we're in the hallway, and I would go then and take them to the day room. So it's a good thing I was 21 and had a lot of energy for sure.
And strength.
Yeah.
So you started off as an activities assistant. Kind of walk me through the process and what was the next steps involved in becoming the director of social services at Camelot Nursing Home.
Well, I heard rumblings that that lady that had been there for so long was getting ready to resign, and she was going to leave town and go into something different. And I immediately, again, went and knocked on that door. Hello, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And just really selling myself that I had been in the activities assistant role for a good 6 to 8 months by then, and that position was going to be coming available. And I wanted her to know I was interested. And the greatest thing that she did for me was she knew I had to have my degree before I could really ever take that position. That was just what the company was looking for, that it would say that I had a degree in psychology and social work underneath it. And then I could become I could actually go into other medical facilities of America's facilities and do work in their charts. And so they could use me in different capacities of the company. And I would go to Livingston after I got this job and, do their consultant work for all of their social work notes because, as you know, the state comes in. It's no different for nursing homes. State comes in and we had to learn how to write the care plan. So I was very educated and all of that. But knocked on her door one day and said, I know Diane's leaving. I still remember the girl's name. I would love for you to consider me for this job. I know I'm young. I know I don't have the experience that anybody else has, but I do know that I love these residents and I am willing to work really hard for this position. Now, where I am today, when someone that has been in our company wants to move up the ranks, if they come and say those words to me, I automatically sit up and listen. And it takes me back to those days where I was that employee saying, hey, just give me a chance. So I prayed really hard, Lord, I really want that job. You're making it available. I know you're going to see me through it. And we were with Ed Milet recently, and he talked about seeing in your mind, actually visualizing, seeing the things that you really want to have happen to you. See it happen over and over again. Close your eyes. And I did that. When Ed was talking, I didn't even know I had learned those kinds of skills back then, but then I realized how powerful they were. And when you guys grew up, I would always say, see it happen, smell it, taste it, be in the room. Did you see it? Did it happen? Same way here. I every night I would just see myself walking into that building, walking into Mrs. Kill's office and her saying, you're going to be the next director of social services. And literally the office was so small I could barely turn around in it, but it meant so much to me. And so I'd see that office. I'd see myself sitting there. I'd see myself doing the work. I'd see myself meeting families, taking them and showing them rooms and selling the beds and understanding the industry over and over and over again. And one day I got a call that I'd been chosen for the job. And I worked really, really hard from there to keep that facility. We kept a certain amount of private pay beds, Medicaid beds, Medicare beds. We had 180 beds, and our census was always extremely high. We had a good reputation. I worked hard to educate those staff on how important it was for hospitality, for the greeting and meeting of new residents, for family involvement. I look back now, and those 4 years were really, really going to interpret who I was going to be going forward.
I think that's so cool, especially for younger people to hear the power, for one, of positive thinking.
Yeah, visualization.
Seeing it happen. When you were in that room, that was no surprise to you because you've been seeing that happen for the past maybe month. And you're like, I'm going to be in that chair. I'm going to get that raise. I'm going to get that job. But I also think it shows the level of your persistence and the level of, thinking that I can do this, and you made yourself available. So you were the only kind of the natural fit,
right?
I think. So I think that's awesome. Obviously, working in that role, social work, you're working with a lot of families. You're working with, children. And what did that kind of look like? And then what was the hardest part of kind of being a social worker?
Well, the hardest part for me was my age. and inexperienced. No one ever really wanted to take me seriously. So I had to work extra hard to be articulate and educated in everything that had to do with aging. So I buddied up with the director of nursing, which was Joyce Wade, who now works for us. And she's the director of our education program within Runk and Pratt. She runs our CNA school and all the certifications, registered med aid classes. She does it all.
I've heard that name my whole life.
Retired from Centra. And she and I were about 10 years apart in age, and she scooped me up and mentored me. I learned so much about the geriatric body. I learned all about the medications at that time and what was being used to treat this and that. And so when I would sit with the family, when they would come and want to talk to me about placing their loved one, I had so much knowledge. And it really proves that no matter how old you are, if you know what you're talking about, you literally become the expert in front of the person that you're selling whatever service you're selling to. So again, I felt very confident in my knowledge, and Joyce mentored me, and I was involved in high-level management meetings. If a patient was going from one level of care to the next, I was highly involved in making sure that family knew. Now, this is being done out of necessity, and Dr. So-and-so has put the notes in the chart, and if you want to come by and talk to me, I'll talk you through all that. It was important to me that the people that I admitted into that facility trusted me and then wanted to be with me and saw me as somebody that they sought out every time they came into the home to be the expert on what they had questions about. And I didn't care if I needed to answer questions about their Medicaid, their Medicare, their insurance and private insurance, or whether they had a bowel movement the night before. I was going to go to that chart and figure it out and help them and know that I was giving them the knowledge to feel good about being there. Because in senior care, it's not just one facility that we're filling in the area, right? You have competitors. I didn't want to lose anybody to a competitor. And if I did, I felt like a failure because I didn't give it my all. Everything is worth savings. There's some families that it's just not meant for them to be with you. And you know that pretty quickly. And you realize that you need to kind of help them find the right place for them in their journey. It's no one's ever sometimes 100% sure that this is where you need to be. But for the most part, I had a lot of family support, and that just enabled me to keep going and come in every day and feel like I had a purpose. And it just revved me up to keep being the best.
So you've always been competitive, is what I'm hearing.
A little bit.
It's just always been there. So looking back, how did your role there eventually prepare you for owning and operating your own senior livings, which is today known as Runk and Pratt Senior Living Communities?
Well, you know the story. I met your dad, fell in love with him. We got married. I started Camelot Hall mid-1987 doing part-time work. Took that full-time work January 1988. Was just about finished with my degree. I still had a little bit more to do, and I let Mrs. Kale know that I was getting married October 8th, 1988. And after that, I still was loving my job, doing everything I needed to do. I had a rough pregnancy. And so she worked with me. She was just so kind, and thinking about employee, hierarchy. She just always made sure that I had everything that I needed because I was a good employee for her. So she wanted to make sure that after I had you, I was going to come back to work and work hard for her. She adjusted my schedule. She knew sometimes I had to leave sick. And so she was very instrumental in showing me how to treat my employees that I was going to get one day. And so shortly after we got married, 8-10 months go by, and I find out that I'm going to have a baby. And then my perception on work-life balance started to change quickly. I was more concerned about, getting back home to you quickly because, Nana was keeping you, and I need to get back home because she was going to go to work after I got off to take care of you. And I started seeking out ways to be a mom and a businesswoman at the same time. And then the Lord really started working on my heart. What you're doing for this company here, you can do the same thing for yourself. Now, when those words came out of my mouth to your dad or my mom and dad, and I started to share what God had put on my heart, I can do this. I know I can. They just kind of looked at me. a little cockeyed, like, how are we going to make this work? And then that's when, we looked, and I found in the paper that Spout Springs Home for Adults was for sale, and I pursued the purchase of that first 19-bed facility.
Many operators come from finance and business backgrounds. You come from the care side and the social work side. How would you say that influenced your leadership style and dealing with families and staff in those early years and even today?
Well, the show that we were just on, I was so excited to think about that. I'd never thought about that question before. And he posed that question to me, and I think it was just a tremendous benefit to learn to love your client so tremendously much that every death bothered me. Every family mattered. And I knew what it took to sell a bed, and I knew what the families were looking for. And to this day, it's never changed. It's just about basic connection with your client, the people that you're serving in your field, understanding that God literally put it in His Word that we are to do unto the least of these. And being called to do that is a tremendous responsibility, and I never took it for granted. And when a family had a good experience with us, that was just validation that we were doing what I was called to do. And so having that relationship-based business mind was tremendously helpful to me. Now, there were times that I was so relationship-based that the business part was hard for me to get to, because what I wanted to do for our residents, our staff, sometimes didn't make sense in the business world. And you have lived through some of that too. But I always made it work. I always made it work. Even if I had to bend a little bit, Dad had to bend a little bit with what we need to do with finances, we found the common ground.
You've always grown up telling me, in the social work background, you're especially dealing with families, and this is in life in general, but you always look, Christopher, everything is fixable if we just sit down and have a discussion. And that's what I know you did with a lot of families early on, calling them in. I mean, I've seen you sit through many hundreds of family meetings, and I always love to go into those meetings with you, and you've allowed me to come in there with you, and it's wonderful to watch you really navigate a lot of the challenges that the families are facing. Some of them are very difficult.
Yes,
these are situations, and I love this about that show and the knowledge that you bring and that we're able to give to people, because those situations are extremely difficult. They're hard, and you don't get faced with them too many times in life, right?
Right.
So when they hit you, you're like, what do I do? And that's when our families, our staff, sons and daughters, they need answers. And to sit back and watch you navigate that, and watch our staff that you've trained, handpicked and hand-trained, navigate those personal challenges that only come once or twice in a lifetime has been enjoyable to watch, and is a real skill set. You mentioned sitting by bedside with somebody as they pass.
Yeah.
That's not something that happens often, right?
That's right.
And I know you've mentored a lot of staff and a lot of church people, even myself. Those are places I never thought I would find myself, but they really are, if you do it correctly, right? And the families all joined together, they're joined at the hip, and they know exactly what they're getting. It really can be a beautiful
thing.
Yeah. So.
Well, we talked about on the show that we were just reverting to, that we talked about my social work background. I talked about from the cradle to the grave. And I brought up on that show, and I'd like to quickly touch on it right now, having a birth in the family is an exciting thing. We all gather around that individual that's getting ready to bring that new baby into the world, and we support her, and we give her time to have that baby. We sit at the hospital 24 hours, and then it goes into 48 hours, and even sometimes 72 hours. And we're excited for the new birth that's coming into the family, and we get tired and we have to take shifts. And then once the baby's born, there's the joy, and then we get them home and we sit and cradle the baby, and we watch that baby, get settled in the first 2 or 3 weeks of her or his life. And from the, that's from the cradle, and then from to the grave, it's the hospice idea of the body doesn't always. Sometimes God, He can take us quickly, but most of the time it is a long process, just like birth. So we didn't get into this world quickly, and sometimes it takes that whole experience of sitting and waiting, and it gives us time to say goodbye, and we're playing our music, and our family is united, and it can be a very beautiful thing. But I refer to that from the cradle to the grave, because, exiting this earth isn't as easy as neither is getting in.
So let's jump into Runk and Pratt a little bit. So you started the company, right? It's exciting. Today, Runk and Pratt serves seniors through independent living, assisted living, memory care, and healthcare services, hospitality, and many other programs. What lessons from your earliest days remain unchanged even today?
That we just got to make our clients happy.
Yeah.
And we got to meet their needs where they are. And sometimes that means our staff has to have a lot of creativity. I spent some time on the phone last night, probably 2 or 3 hours, with a group text of about 6 professionals in our company for one resident that needed extra. And I had ideas on how we could get that done. Today at 10 a.m., I'm on that same group thread, and we're putting all of those extras in place, because she's not normal and we need a few extras to help her with her day. But to me, that's just part of what we do. It was the same back then. It's the same right now. If you meet your clients where they're at and you do an exceptionally great job at making them feel loved and valued and seen, you will be successful.
And I think that also goes to the point of great leadership, because what I'm hearing you say is you listen more than you speak.
Mm-hmm.
And if families need support, great employees change lives, and we never stop learning. So I love that. What advice would you give to someone considering a career in senior care?
Stop thinking that you need that top job. If I hadn't started at a much lower pay, a much lower title, I would never know today what God had intended for me to really understand that, those jobs that sometimes don't pay as much or not as glamorous, that's the road you need to walk down before you can ever go to that next level. And when you get to the next level, you're so appreciative of the wisdom that you gain, because it's not as easy as reading a book. Hands-on in whatever field you're in will always teach you more than, honestly, a college career can.
I'm kind of interested in knowing this. How would you say that senior care in the 1980s, when you were first starting out, looked compared to what senior care is looking like today?
Well, first of all, it was something that no one really wanted to talk about. There was a stigma behind that. You have to understand, back then, our seniors saw nursing homes as institutions. And I would have to say that's probably true. Most nursing homes look like institutions. So as I took my cue on what I needed to build going forward, the very first thing that I always would say to a developer when they were coming in to help us build or remodel one of our places, I do not want this to look like an institution. And in this 50-mile radius, I honestly am proud to say that Runk and Pratt did change the look of the environment and room that resident would have to reside in. Because I believe wholeheartedly, after doing hands-on care for 38 years, that your environment has everything to do with how well you do physically, emotionally, and mentally, and even spiritually. And so to create spaces for people to where we can say we have a world without walls and we don't limit what they see, how they feel, what their experience is for the day, that we're giving them every chance in the world to develop into this person that they may not even know they could be leaving from home, because maybe they didn't open their blinds every day. Maybe they didn't even want to get up till afternoon. Well, we've got purpose for them inside our environments. Now, I say this every show, and I'm not going to not miss this opportunity today. We are not perfect, and there may be situations with families that are not solvable. And usually we know that, and we care so much about the individual that we're serving. We want the family to be 100% sure that they're in the right spot. So if we're not the right spot, we're the first ones to help move on down to another facility that may be able to meet their needs. But I think that if we focus just on turning the page for that resident to where they can see there is hope, there's something to get up for every day. And at home by themselves, they may not have experienced that.
Yeah, you're right. There's so many benefits to I love what you just said, where that they may not even the blinds, something as simple as
Oh,
that.
yeah.
That they're not doing at home. That if they were in a care facility, and they were with other seniors, and the staff were just opening the blinds and letting the sunlight come in and hit their skin, how much more rejuvenated just that one simple thing.
Well,
And then you imagine everything else, the food, the activities, but just that simple. And that comes from being with other people.
Absolutely. And if you go back to the early days, it's really, you talk about the blinds. I was anal with especially in the early days. If I drove by one of my facilities and there were blinds that were not open by 10 a.m., I was on that phone. And if you'll remember, you probably can attest to some of this. Same for nighttime. If I drive by any of my facilities, I got a text the other day that said, Miss Vickie, I know you're going to drive by tonight and see that in the front of the building we have some blinds that are open. A resident actually broke them. We're going to repair them tomorrow. That's how much my administrators know what the expectations are. So when it's nighttime, I want them to have their privacy and I want their blinds shut. And I do check that as I'm, rolling through town, and I will call and tell the staff member which room needs to be taken care of. But, it was so important to me that because of my social work and, experience, we need to be up. We need to have those blinds open by 10. If she doesn't want to get out of the bed right now, it's okay, but she's looking outside, and that's going to cue her as to what time of the day it is. Maybe I do want to get out in the hallway and participate a little bit. So those were just really tiny things that made such a big difference in the lives of our residents.
Well, Mom, thank you for sharing your story today. I know our listeners have a much better understanding that Runk and Pratt wasn't built from a business alone. It was built from years of serving seniors and families firsthand. As we end the show today, I know you like to end each show with a quote or a thought, so take it away.
Well, I would like to say that every resident that I have served and every family has shaped our mission. They've been the people that walked before, and it's been an incredible privilege throughout my career. Scripture reminds us in Proverbs 16:31 that gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. Aging is not something to fear, it's actually a gift. The friendships that we build, the wisdom that we share, and the lives we touch become part of our legacy. May we honor those who have come before us, cherish those that are beside us every day, and continue serving others with grace, compassion, and faith. I hope you've had fun kind of checking into in the early years of my life, and we do love to talk about how God chose us, He prepared us, and now we're living out His mission. Until next week, I am Vickie, and we are both right here around the table.